And we are live. Happy Thursday. Happy to see everyone here today. My name is Maggie Nielsen, and I am a partner at Purse Strings. And today we're going to be talking with Amy Evans about, having employees benefits and having people on as employees and providing those benefits and what that kind of looks like. So we are Purse Strings. We provide financial education for women, but we know knowledge can only take you so far, and you need a professional to put things in transition or transaction. So we have top tier financial professionals who understand the plight of women, want to work with the female market, and so they're willing and ready and able to serve you. We call those our Purse Strings approved professionals, and Amy Evans is one of them. So we are so happy to have you here today and to help educate us on this topic.
Thanks, Maggie. It's good to be here.
Will you just share with the audience of who you are and where you're calling in from today?
Yeah, I am in Eagle Rock, which is a little neighborhood in Northeast Los Angeles. So I'm in Southern California in the beautiful weather. And yeah, that is a little bit to rub it into the people that are still dealing with the misery of winter.
We're at a balmy 53 today, so we're bringing out our bathing suits.
There you go. Well, that's not too bad. I am a health insurance broker, and that means that I am the go-between with employers who want to offer health insurance to their employees and the insurance carriers that provide that insurance. And I support both the employers in implementing those plans and taking care of them throughout the year. And then I also support their employees when they have issues related to those benefits. And I've been in this industry for 20 years in a couple different roles. I had my own agency, and last year that agency was acquired, and now I work with a much larger agency, still doing the same thing, which in its briefest form, I describe as simplifying employee benefits for employers and their employees.
I was going to say, you are kind of like the translator, it's kind of, there's all this gibberish and you just kind of translate it to what we call English, layman's terms.
Yep.
So yeah, this is a great topic to really bring into our month of, business owners being, boss women and things like that. And if we grow to a certain point, we're going to have employee benefits.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there are it's different to have an employee versus if you have someone who is just a consultant. You don't have to give them benefits. And so that's one of the main things of deciding if you're going to make someone an employee versus just having them as a consultant. Mm-hmm. So when should a business owner really consider, offering employee benefits?
That's a fantastic question. I want to clarify one thing as we talk, because you'll hear me use the terms employee benefits and health insurance interchangeably. Employee benefits is a broad term that encompasses all kinds of things that an employer might offer to an employee. Vacation time is an employee benefit. I deal strictly with the insurance pieces that fall under the employee benefits heading. And the majority of my time and employer's time and employees' attention and the money that an employer and employee spend are on the health insurance piece. So other insurance components can be under that employee benefits umbrella, things like dental insurance, vision insurance, life insurance, disability insurance, even pet insurance can all fall under the employee benefits definition. But you may hear me say health insurance. I don't mean to exclude the other types of insurance, but health insurance is usually where an employer starts. And like I said, it's where most of their time and money gets spent and most of where my time gets spent. So if you hear me sort of code switch back and forth, that's why. When should an employer think about offering employee benefits? Typically, an employer starts thinking about offering employee benefits when an employee starts asking for them. So either an employee's asking or the employer's trying to attract new talent. And in the interview process, they're finding that candidates are asking, what kinds of employee benefits do you offer? Can I take a look at them? What percentage of the premium do you cover? Especially if an employer, a small employer, is looking to attract people from a larger company. They may have talent and experience, and that person may want to come and work in a more a startup or an entrepreneurial environment. That employer is going to have to reconcile with the fact that that employee came from probably a very nice benefits package, and they may want to look at mirroring what employees might have had in a different industry or in a different employer, or at least putting something in place so that employees feel like they're not losing benefits that they had at their previous job. And it is most common that I have conversations with employers when they're in that situation. Employees have come to them and said, I've been working for you for a long time. I would like to have employee benefits, or they're trying to attract new employees, and the new employees are asking in the interview process.
That makes a ton of sense. I mean, I can see why people don't want to do it before they have to, like provide those things before they have to. But it's also, we know a lot of people stay with a career because of the health insurance benefits, or just keep down that job because it's not a high paying job, but the way the health insurance benefits work, it's really beneficial for the family. And so, and it's a big thing entrepreneurs face, who's going to pay that health care. So I can definitely see why these people would start asking and want this from their company.
Mm-hmm. I wanted to also talk about the have to, because you mentioned that some people might be familiar with the Affordable Care Act and the requirements that it created for employers to offer health insurance. If you're under 50 full-time employees, you are not required by the Affordable Care Act to offer insurance of any kind. So you can be an employer under 50 employees, not have any employee benefits in place. There's no obligation, there's no law, there's no penalty, there's no reporting, there's no nothing that you need to do under 50 employees. Over 50 employees, you are indeed required to offer health insurance or pay a penalty. You can actually opt out of offering the health insurance, but there's a hefty penalty for not doing it.
I'm sure.
So most employers choose to go the offering route. At the 50 employee mark, typically companies will have had the conversation about employee benefits far before they hit the 50 employee mark. But I want smaller employers to understand they're not at all obligated to offer, but there may be a public relations issue that motivates them to look at offering. So again, they can attract and retain good employees.
Now, just for you, do you work with companies specifically like under 50 or over 50? Do you have a specialty in one of those areas?
Yeah, the answer to that is I work with companies of all sizes.
Okay.
There's a hard line in the insurance world between under 100 employees and over 100 employees in California. That's different from that under 50, over 50 that I was just talking about related to the Affordable Care Act. So the under 50, over 50 applies across the country. But individual states define what a small employer is versus a large employer. And in California, that's under 100, over 100. And that makes a difference because the way that the rates are determined and the plans that are available and the carriers that work with those companies differ when you're under 100 employees or over 100 employees. I would say the majority of the clients that I work with are under 100 employees. And the last time I saw a statistic in Los Angeles, it was 90+% of employers are under 100 employees. So the majority of companies are small businesses. And I also work with companies that have never offered insurance and are just doing it for the first time. So obviously those would be considered small employers as well. But that process takes some care and education that is different from me just taking over an existing benefit plan for a company that's had it in place for a long time. Those are generally easy, although sometimes there's some cleanup to do. But walking an employer through the process of implementing a new plan and then educating the employees on that new plan is a special skill set that I have developed in the time that I've been in this industry.
And what does that process kind of look like? Not all the nuts and bolts, but the main overview.
Yeah. So I would meet with an employer and talk to them about what their employee population looks like. Is this a bunch of young guys working in a factory? They're probably not married. They're probably not in the baby having stages yet. Maybe they are super active and play sports and are really looking for catastrophic coverage if there's a skiing accident or a car accident. But otherwise, these are not the kind of guys that maybe are going for their annual physicals. They're not filling a lot of prescriptions. That's a particular type of employee population with a specific insurance need. There might be another employer that has women in their late 20s, 30s, 40s who are high users of health insurance plans, who do go get their annual well woman exams and their mammograms. Maybe there's a certain number of those women who are in the baby making stages. And so what's important for their health insurance plan is going to be different. They care about hospitalization. They care about, neonatal care. So the kind of plans that I would look at for that group would be different from the first group. I also want to know where the employees are located, because access to care is something that's important. So in Southern California, we have an amazing system called Kaiser that is fantastic if you live near a Kaiser facility, but if you don't, it's not a good option. And so understanding where the employees are located and where they want to be able to go get care is important. And then understanding the employer's budget and the employee's budget is something else I want to determine. A lot of times a new employer is not going to have any concept of how much this is going to cost, how much they need to contribute, how much the employees need to contribute. But we need to go down that road to understand what price point we want to start with. And then I also want to understand, these employees who would be better served with an HMO policy where they don't particularly care about having access to a broad network of doctors. They don't have any particular doctors that are super important to them. That scenario might be better for those young employees who just need catastrophic coverage. Whereas a group of women in their 20s, 30s, 40s in baby making and child raising probably do have pediatricians they care about and OBGYNs they care about. And so they may be better for a PPO plan design where they want to know that their doctors are in network and they can pick specific doctors to go to. So I need to take all that information, meeting with an employer, understanding what they need. And I look at it like a mixing board in a recording studio. I kind of have all these dials and buttons that I fool around with in order to generate a quote that puts us on that path. And the quoting process can take a few months before we ever put a plan in place.
Really?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's not that the information isn't available, but I need to sort of run all that information through, review what I get back. There are thousands of plan options. There are many, many, many insurance carriers and many, many, many plan designs. And so I need to take a look at which of those plans will fit that scenario based on my understanding of what the employer needs. I may present that information and the employer may say, I'm willing to spend a little bit more than what you're showing me, or that's a little bit higher than I was expecting. And so we may need to go back to the drawing board a few times in order to refine what we've got. And then once we've settled on the insurance carrier, the plan design, the employer contribution, then we need to create an open enrollment for the employees where they are educated about what's available to them and they make their individual elections. And then we submit all that paperwork to the insurance carrier and cross our fingers for approval. And then once the insurance carrier says, yes, we have approved all this coverage, this group is good to go, then we have a plan in place. And it can be months and months of process. It really is an education for the employer to understand how to navigate all of this. One issue I run into a lot, and I always appreciate the opportunity to educate people about this. I often talk to employers who have just started a business and maybe they're bringing on 4 or 5 people and they may not have even hired everybody yet, but they've got the funding, they're out the gate, they know what they're doing. And they contact me and say, I'm about ready to hire and I want to have benefits to offer employees when they come on board. Can we put a plan in place now so that when I'm interviewing people, I can show them what we're offering? And it may sound crazy, but the answer to that is no. Insurance carriers need to know that a company is established and has a certain history of payroll with W-2'd individual human beings that we can identify before we can quote and write the group insurance. And so I often have to explain to an employer, we can't set up a plan just in theory and then add people to it. We actually have to have the people first. And we have to be able to show that you are a valid company that has a history of payroll. And really a lot of the rules related to establishing group health insurance that seem frustrating are in place to prevent employers, to prevent people from setting up kind of like a shell company just so that they can get group benefits. So we really need to show that it's a valid company in order to be able to write the group.
I guess that makes sense. Offer these benefits, when people are being onboarded. So how long do people have to kind of be on with the W-2 to start building this plan?
In general, sometimes the carrier will take just a few weeks of payroll. So let's say they start payroll on May 15th. We could potentially write a group for June 1st. It's going to take some fancy dancing to get it all done. Some carriers require a month of payroll. And sometimes insurance carriers run, for lack of a better term, a special. There's never a special on rates. There's never like, hey, sign up with us now and rates are 25% lower than they normally are. That never happens.
Nope.
However, sometimes carriers relax their guidelines for bringing new employers on board. So it may be that we can write a group and then provide the payroll after the fact. It kind of depends on where we are in the year and what certain carriers are doing to incentivize new business to come their way. But I would say in general, at least a few weeks of payroll. You've got to have the people on payroll, be able to provide a payroll report. It can't just be a spreadsheet. It's got to be from a payroll system that clearly establishes your tax ID and what their gross pay is and what their net pay is. And like all of that has to be super clear and super clean for an insurance carrier to write a contract.
That makes a lot of sense, but it's nice that it's only just a couple pay periods, not 6 months or something lengthier to really prevent that.
Yeah.
And so the way you've kind of explained this process and the thousands of options and everything else, to me, that's why somebody would work with a broker, because that sounds like a whole project. That's why you're a specialist in it and I'm not. Why else? I mean, why are there like common mistakes of why people should work with a broker, or what else is recommended besides it's a huge fee? Why else would you work with a broker?
For sure. Yeah. Great question. So first, in most scenarios, there's no cost to work with a broker like me. I get compensated by the insurance companies when I place business with them. I don't get paid a fee by a client. So while the commissions are essentially built into the rates, they're not separated from the rates. And so for a business, there's no additional cost in order to work with somebody like me. So that's an important thing to understand. It still surprises me sometimes. I have kind of this conversation, an initial conversation with the business owner. And at the end of it, they say, okay, how much is this going to cost me to work with you? And I forget that they don't know yet that it's not going to cost them anything.
Well, your services sound too good to be true.
Well, I get compensated by the insurance company because they want me to place the right company with the right policies, with the right insurance carrier, and navigate the whole process of gathering information, completing the employer paperwork, completing the employee paperwork, and making sure that all of the I's are dotted and all of the T's are crossed, because that makes it easier for them to put the group through underwriting and then know that this is a solid, valid group that's going to be well taken care of. So they compensate me for doing that work. So that's one reason. Another reason is a business might contact one insurance carrier and say, "Hey, we would be interested in having an insurance contract with you." And there are very few carriers that would actually provide a quote not through a broker anymore. But a company might be able to get their hands on a quote from one carrier. That's just one carrier. First of all, they probably don't know how to navigate the quote because it's probably hundreds of different policies and plan designs and rates. So it's going to be confusing, but also they're not looking at the entire market. They're just looking at one narrow slice of that market. And my job is to look at the entire market and know, again, back to the conversation with the employer about their demographics and what their budget is. I do the majority of that filtering before the employer ever even has to see a quote, so that I'm really narrowing in on the thing that's the best fit for them. An employer navigating all of that would be, they don't have the expertise. They wouldn't want the expertise. We speak a lot in acronyms in the health insurance world. And so unraveling that would be super confusing. Another piece is there's ongoing servicing of a client. So it's not just setting up a health insurance plan and educating the employees to get them enrolled, but there's all the questions that happen throughout the year when someone has trouble getting into a doctor, when they have a question about a claim, when they have a qualifying event, they've gotten married and they want to add their spouse to their plan, or they've gotten divorced and they want to remove their spouse from their plan. So there's a benefit of having a person like me who can be a contact for the employees. And many of the employers I work with give my contact information to their employees and say, call Amy, she'll help you figure that out. So that alleviates a lot of work on the employer's part, because they can send the employees to me. And then there's all kinds of complex compliance issues related to scary acronyms. ERISA, which is federal law that relates to employers offering employee benefits. And there are certain rules that you have to follow and comply with when you put employee benefits in place. There's the interface between benefits and human resources. How are you explaining benefits eligibility in your employee handbook? And while I'm not an HR expert, I work frequently with HR people to make sure that they've got the right information. There's sometimes employment law issues. If an employee says that they should have been eligible for benefits and they weren't offered benefits, and navigating that with an employment law attorney is something I do. There's COBRA, which is an employer's requirement to offer a continuation of coverage to employees if their employment terminates. So if they were enrolled in benefits and they quit, they have the option to continue their benefits for a certain period of time. So working with a broker like me means that there's a person that the employer can go to when they have questions. And I'm also advising them on what they need to do in order to stay in compliance. Also the Affordable Care Act that we talked about. So once they hit 50 employees, we've got to talk about being in compliance with the ACA. So there's a lot that I do.
I was like, that sounds like a full-time job, but it is your full-time job. So I am going to leave that one to a professional, because it does sound like a lot of work and a lot of little intricacies that, we don't know, which is fine. And so what else should business owners consider besides just that price of healthcare? I know you said your services are free, but are there any other, fees, ups and extras that are pulled into that?
Yeah, there's certainly, I would say the first thing for an employer to consider is are they willing to make the space for the employees to be educated about their benefits? Because if an employer comes to me and says, I just want to do the cheapest thing possible so that I can say I'm offering benefits, but I really, I don't want to have a meeting. I don't want to take people off of the job in order to, give them the opportunity to be educated about benefits, then it's just a waste of everybody's time. They need to be willing to view this as a positive for the employees. I certainly look at it as a wonderful PR opportunity for the employer to say, hey, this is something that we're doing for you. We've put a lot of thought into this. We put a lot of work into this. We put a lot of money into it, because insurance carriers require that an employer make a contribution towards the cost of employee coverage. So it is not free for an employer to offer employee benefits, because they're required by the carriers to contribute to the cost. That contribution can vary widely depending on the type of plan and the carrier, but there is a cost to the employer. So it's a PR opportunity to be able to say to the employees, this is something new that we're doing for you. I often take over benefit plans where the broker didn't view it that way and didn't really encourage the employer to view it that way. And I get the opportunity to kind of revisit it with the employees and say, no, this is how much they're paying towards your plan. Like, this is in addition to your compensation, back to a point you made at the beginning. In addition to your compensation, this is a real value to you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one piece. There's also an administrative cost to offering benefits. So you need to keep track of new employees, and when they become eligible, they need to be offered the opportunity to enroll. There's a monthly invoice that needs to be reconciled and paid. There are things like I mentioned COBRA. We need to put a COBRA service in place for employers who have over 20 employees, and we need to be sure that when an employee comes on board or terminates, payroll understands how that affects payroll deductions. Right. So typically there's somebody at an employer. It may be the owner. It may be someone in kind of an office manager role, or as a company gets bigger and they have someone in a human resources role, that's typically the person I'm interfacing with to make sure that all these things are in place. But they're beyond just the cost of the employer contribution. There may be some additional services like COBRA that they may pay for in order to make sure that everything is running smoothly. Any costs that they pay for are certainly better than the penalties that they would get if they weren't in compliance.
I'm sure. And I like how you kind of redid that perspective of like, no, this is as an employee, you see it as a true benefit. But if that employer is really, kind of gifting you some more, like they're paying more of it than expected, then your salary kind of went up, which is great.
Yeah. I'm always surprised when employees are not told what the employer contribution to their coverage is. And I use an online enrollment platform that employees use to make their elections. And there's a little box in there that I can click to either hide or show employer contributions. And it's always amazing to me if somebody's hiding them, because I think it's super important. Just to give a personal example, when I sold my agency in October of last year, I entered into an employment agreement with the acquiring agency. And so I am now part of their benefits package. And as an employee benefits professional, of course, I wanted to get my hands on that and see what it looked like and go through the enrollment process. And between the contributions they make, not to the 401k, but to all of my other benefits, including my spouse coverage, the value of what they're contributing is about an additional $20,000 of income per year. 20,000. That's a lot of money. And that is super significant to me. And to be able to frame that, even for myself, to be able to frame that and go, wow, in addition to my, my sort of known compensation, I'm getting an extra $20,000 of benefit from this company. That really means a lot. And I think it's important, even for the smallest employers, to communicate that to the employees.
That's huge. And that's a great reason why you might not leave, is because if some place is paying you $10,000 more, but not offering benefits, you assess that and see that it's not always equal. So that's why sometimes we definitely have to talk past the compensation, and all these different benefits that you get are really money and monetary, and, can change your decision for sure. And so it seems like, healthcare can really boost you up, and you should share some of this information with your employees.
For sure.
I feel like there's been a ton of great information in this session of just to start people dabbling and thinking about this. Are there any last tips, tricks, piece of advice that you would like to give our audience today?
My wish for employers is that they find a broker that they feel really comfortable with, that they feel is asking the right questions and is really operating in their best interest, and understand that this is not it's not completely a money play. It is not as simple as, I have $200 per employee per month to spend. What can I get for that? There's so many factors that go into it. It's different from insurance like life insurance, which is sort of commoditized, and there's lots of different places you can buy life insurance, and a $50,000 policy is kind of a $50,000 policy. Health insurance has got a lot of complexity, a lot of layers to it. Employees need to understand the value, understand how it works, and understand the value of it. And so when an employer is sort of ready in their heart to go down this path, it's not always going to be simple. It's probably going to cost you more than you expect it's going to. It's probably going to create, right? It's probably going to create some more headaches than you're anticipating. I always advise employers who are just stepping into the space that it's gonna be more frustrating than you expect. But I'm setting the expectation in advance and telling you that I'm going to hold your hands along the way. But having somebody who really understands what you're trying to accomplish is going to give you the confidence that what you settle on is the best choice for you and your employees right now based on what's available. What's available changes all the time. Insurance contracts renew every year, and 12 months from now, there are going to be different plan designs, different rates, different insurance carriers. Something new and flashy is going to come up in the next 12 months that may or may not be worth looking at. So what is the best choice at that time is going to be totally different than what the best choice is at this time. But working with a broker that makes you feel like you've got all the information you want, your questions can be answered, and what you've settled on is absolutely the best thing for right now is what I hope employers get from going through this process.
Awesome. And yeah, if you're going to go through all that hard work, you might as well have like a satisfactory end and be confident in the final decision. I mean, if you're going to do it all, do it right is really how we always like to go about it. Yeah. So Amy, we really appreciate you coming on today. You can always reach out to Amy at shorepointinsurance.com. She's from ShorePoint Insurance Services. She's also one of our Purse Strings approved professionals, so you can check her out on our site, pursestrings.co. And we are excited to come back next week with one more week of women in business and being an entrepreneur. And so we will see everyone next week. If you have any other questions, please reach out to Amy or reach out to myself, and we're more than happy to help. So thank you.
Thanks, Maggie.